Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very first session of the Kigali Dialogue, which is titled The Kigali Consensus, a New Charter for Growth and Development. And I must congratulate ORF and Rwandan colleagues. That's a very ambitious thing to do, to talk about the consensus in the very first session, which reflects a high level of confidence that there will be one. Unless this is one of those Foreign Office events where these things are done well in advance of our coming, but I know it's not. So we should have an interest on the topic, which is the consensus and resonance in a dialogue such as this. And then we will either throw it open depending on interest, or we'll come back to a second round. So let me just start by saying two things that, Sanjoy mentioned and the Minister mentioned, I think, two very important things in the morning, in the session that's just complete. The first was that the place where you sit determines what you regard are priorities. But unfortunately, the place where you do not sit sometimes continues to determine your priorities, and therefore it's as important to try and use, fora such as this to understand that solidarity would involve taking on other kinds of consensuses. And let me give you one example. So as an Indian, I very often make this point, I've been making it since Paris, that India is the first country in the world to be expected to complete its development transformation without significant incremental recourse to fossil fuels. The first in the world. Everyone else did it and then is dismantling it. We're asked to do it at once, and we are told it'll be cheap, it'll be fine. That's a different set of issues. The fact remains, it's uncharted territory. But it's India and the next 30 countries in Africa that are actually collectively being asked to do this. So we have a very specific reason for taking a view in Kigali that is different from the rest of the world when it comes to climate change, simply because we are going to have to walk this journey on a path which no one else has walked. And we will do it, but we are aware that this is therefore both different and perhaps less prone to the seductive appeals to our common planet than one is used to hearing in places like Paris and California. So that's one. The second, I think, came from the minister's statement, which is that it's important to understand that there is, just as one of the virtues of the end of the globalization consensus is that for us economists, the theory of efficient markets is dead. No one believes it anymore and actually find it outdated and funny. They don't sound interesting at all. They sound boring. When you rabbit on about, the benefits of a globalized economy, zero tariffs, export promotion gone, etc., etc. If you've been in this business for a while, you've seen it coming, and it's not regarded as interesting. What one therefore takes away from it is that, and I take away this from the minister's speech, which I think is very important, that there is a history in the development community of punishing countries for failures measured by the framework that has been set by the rich countries to measure success and failure. Be that good governance, be that the rule of law, be that human rights, or be that the structural adjustment free market paradigm. And you know what? That's not going to work anymore. And therefore, I think the metrics of success and failure will not be decided anymore in New York, London, or Paris. Roughly 3 minutes or so on your top 3 takeaways for this conversation.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much, ORF, for inviting me, and it's lovely to be in Rwanda. Roy is actually telling a big truth. India deciding to take a low-carbon development path, they were not agreeing to 1.5 degrees. And it was very difficult for developing countries, small countries like the Maldives, to argue against India or to argue with our own people. And just last year, in November, I again went to path. A low-carbon development strategy is completely possible. We now have the technology, we now have the know-how, energy production, for instance. Now, Roy is suggesting that India is the first country to take this path. The developed countries having reached this level of development through fossil fuel and through much different types of technologies. Recently, in a bid for a power station in India, the renewable energy bid was actually cheaper than the coal bid. California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and it is becoming carbon neutral. It is possible to produce electricity now in any given situation through renewable sources, cheaper than fossil fuel.
10, 12 years, development-friendly growth, and do so on a sort of standalone, economically viable basis, but are not doing so in order to make huge returns. Indeed, they don't, they basically break even. But they bring with them all the private sector disciplines. And just, to read you some very quick statistics. So in 2018, the companies backed by CDC directly employed